I'm President and CEO of the Alliance for Water Efficiency, and we'd like to welcome you today to our webinar that will talk about how you can benefit from using AWE's water usage calculator. We have a presentation for you that will last about an hour. That'll include time for questions from you. And we have speakers who are joining us today to participate in the webinar. But first I'd like to give you a few minutes of instruction about how we run our webinar. So if we can go to the next slide. As I mentioned, the webinar will be 60 minutes in length. The audio for the webinar can be done two ways, either through your telephone or through a computer, microphone, and speakers. We have you muted, so you cannot actually ask us questions during the webinar. The reason we mute the webinar is so that the recording that we are making of this webinar will be clean and will be free of background noises and distractions, and will provide a clean recording for those who want to listen to it later. But that doesn't mean you can't participate. We have a setup here through our GoToWebinar program that allows you to type in questions throughout the webinar in a dialog box that you can open up on the right-hand side of your screen. If you look, there's a little bar that has at the top of it an orange box with a white arrow. When you click on that white arrow, it opens up a box that enables you to type in your question down at the bottom. And Jeffrey Hughes in our office is monitoring all the questions and will be assembling them for our speakers to answer during the webinar itself. So please feel free to type in any questions you have as you go along, and we'll be happy to answer them at the end. So if you are hearing my voice, you've figured out the audio. The reason we've got this on the slide is to make sure that those of you who are still connecting will know that you can either do the audio through your telephone or through a computer microphone connection. So let's move on to the next slide. I'd like to introduce the speakers that we have for you today. In addition to myself as the webinar moderator, I'll be talking a little bit about our calculator as well. We have Peter Mayer from WaterDM. Peter was very involved in the building of the calculator and the partnership that we undertook with the Field Museum. And he's also the project manager on our water calculator customization project. We also have with us Steve Weitzel with Radian Technical Marketing. Radian was the firm that actually built the calculator and launched it for us on our Home Waterworks website. And he also will be handling all of the IT issues associated with the water calculator customization. So we want to thank both Peter and Steve for joining us in this webinar. So let's go to the next slide and talk about the purpose, what we were trying to do today. What we'd like to do is show you physically the water usage calculator, explain its structure, and show you the special features in a live demonstration that Peter will run from his computer. We also want to give you some program ideas on how you can benefit from the calculator just the way it is, and how you can use the calculator to provide useful information to your customers. Whether you're a water utility or whether you're a business, I think the calculator is something that can help you in your day-to-day activity. And then lastly, we'd like to describe what options we have for customizing the calculator for your specific program objectives and making the calculator be very specific to you and your organization. So let's start with the background on the calculator. Let's go to the next slide. As those of you know who are familiar with our Home Waterworks site, the calculator is a main feature of that site. That site is a website that we've built specifically for the customer, for the homeowner and home renting resident. And that website, which you see the URL for there, has on its opening page jumping right into our water usage calculator. And when we decided we wanted to build one, we looked around, we saw that there were a number of calculators out there that already existed, some of which were quite beautiful with respect to graphics, and one of those calculators was one built by the Field Museum in Chicago. But we noticed that their calculation algorithms for calculating water consumption were not as accurate as they could be. So we entered into a partnership agreement with them whereby we were able to use their calculator graphics, and we were able to put in the background information that was much more accurate and would yield results for the customers that more closely approximated their actual water use. The calculator itself is built in Drupal, so it's built in a platform that is openly accessible. The background algorithms that Peter and Steve used to build the calculator employ data from the residential end uses studies that are undertaken by the Water Research Foundation. And so those of you who are familiar with those studies know that the Water Research Foundation is about to release a new version of residential end use data. And when that data is released, we will populate the calculator with that new data. So it is always going to be an ongoing live calculator with the most current information available from research. We also built the calculator to automatically switch to metric units so that it converts from gallons to liters when a user enters a postal code from Canada. So this is an improvement that we made as a benefit to our Canadian members. And then lastly, an important feature of the calculator is that outdoor water needs and projected usage is calculated with an evapotranspiration ET database, which is connected to U.S. zip codes and Canadian postal codes. And next slide shows you a map where you can see how the ET varies across at least the United States. And so we have data for the entire continental United States, as well as data for Canada, all the 13 provinces. So the calculations made for outdoor water use will utilize this information and be very specific to the hydrology, the local hydrology of the region. So on the next slide, we'll talk about other special features of the calculator. We're particularly proud of this calculator because we think it has an easy-to-use graphical interface. There are 4 simple beginning questions that launch the calculator, and they give a preliminary consumption estimate, which is later refined in what I like to call a little treasure hunt. So you get an answer almost right away that's in the general ballpark, but the specific answers for your household need some clarification. So there are a series of little questions embedded through the household graphics, and Peter will do the demo and show it to you in a minute. So the user searches for that magnifying glass icon where a question needs to be answered, and those answers then help further refine the estimate to be more accurate so that the household water usage estimate actually reflects what the data should show. And so the user, if the user doesn't finish all of those answers in a short period of time, the user can save the calculator answers and then come back to it later. So I'd like to actually turn it over to Peter to talk about the next slide, which is the calculator outputs, and then he'll also go into the demo.
Thank you very much, Marianne, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone out there in webinar land. Glad that you could join us today. So the water calculator has some very specific and what we hope are useful outputs for people who actually complete all the questions. The key thing is, in order to get the output of the calculator, though, you do have to complete all the questions. And once that's done, then you get information in a tabular form and a pie chart. There's a report that you can actually print very easily. And along with that, you get information about where you might be able to improve the efficiency of water use within your own home. Because the calculator compares your answers against an average home in your zip code and also with what we hope is a water efficient home in that same zip code, we're able to identify areas where water use might be higher in the way that the user completed the calculator than, say, the water efficient home. And for those particular categories, then we give specific tips for improving water efficiency. We also have a carbon footprint calculator which utilizes some very basic information about hot water heating within the house, and it's really about the energy that's used to heat water for showering, for faucets, for clothes washing, and things like that. And then we try to come up with an estimate of the carbon footprint associated with that. And we also have a menu which allows people to improve their efficiency for both indoors and outdoors. So without any further ado, I am going to jump right into a live demo of the water calculator. And here I am. This is at the homewaterworks.org website, and this is the very start of the water use calculator. So I'm going to move through this fairly quickly, talking my way through it. Marianne, please let me know if my verbiage gets ahead of where the screen refresh is. But for the time being, let's just assume that it works pretty quickly. So the very first question is a zip code. I'm going to complete this thing for my own house, since I know those answers the most cleanly. So I live in Boulder, Colorado, 80304. My home was built before 1995. This is an important distinguisher between what type of plumbing fixtures might be found in the house. There are 4 people who live in my house, so I'm going to up that number to 4. And then, yes, this is an important question. Do you use water outdoors to irrigate the landscape or to fill up a pool? This really, if you answer no to this question, then there won't be any outdoor water use calculated. So you got to answer yes in order to get that. And then the final question of the initial run-through is the size of the landscape. And you have a choice of some different sizes. This would be something that if someone was customizing the calculator could be configurable. You can also select other and then specify your own specific area. So I'm going to put 8,000 square feet, which I happen to know is very close to the actual irrigated area at my house. So once I'm done with those questions, then instantly we get some output from the calculator. So based on your answers, our quick estimate is that your entire household consumes 247.2 gallons per day indoors and 320.4 gallons per day outdoors. So that's a pretty rough estimate, and now I can go on the treasure hunt through the different rooms of the house to determine and to refine that estimate of water use. So here is the house that we have, and there's 4 different areas that you have to complete information for in order to get to the final answers on the calculator. So let's start in the kitchen. So we move quickly to the kitchen. You see there's a bunch of different buttons I can push. The I buttons are all informational water tips. So if I click on a tip, it says keep a container of water in the fridge so you don't have to run the faucet. These tips are also things that could be configured by a utility that wanted to deliver some specific information to their customers. The question marks, though, are where we really need to answer things to refine the calculator results. So yes, there is a dishwasher at my house. And I have installed a new Energy Star dishwasher. Yes, I have replaced my dishwasher since 2006. And in our house, we run the dishwasher a lot. So I'm going to say that we run it 6 times a week. I think that's probably more accurate with all the growing boys and all the dishes. So there's a number of other tips. Because of the time constraint, I'm not going to go through all of the different tips, but I can just show you one more here for the faucet. Water from your faucet is hundreds times cheaper than bottled water. So again, useful information for the customer. Once you get that green check mark, though, for the room, then you know that it's okay. You can go back to the overall view and move on to the next room. So we're done now with the kitchen. We're going to move on to the bathroom. In the bathroom, there are 4 different fixtures that I need to answer questions about. Let's start with the bathtub. The typical person in my house takes blank baths per week. So now the only people that actually, there's only one person in my house that takes baths, and he doesn't take that many baths per week. So I am going to just put 1. That would be, I think, the correct answer for that one. It's a little bit of judgment that has to be used in some of these questions. Let's move on to the faucet. I turn off the faucet while brushing my teeth and doing other tasks. Yes, of course I do that. I've installed a water reducing low flow aerator in my bathroom. Yes, I've done that in all the bathrooms in my house, so I'm going to say yes to that. That's it for the faucets. Let's go on to the showers now. Typical person in my house takes blank showers per week. So this one I've got to think a little bit about because most people shower every day. Some people shower maybe every other day. So I think if on the average, 5 or 6 showers per person per day is probably about right. Let's just go with 5. I have installed WaterSense labeled shower heads in my home. Yes, that is true. So I will submit that. So now I'm done with showers. And now I'll go on to the toilet questions. Have the toilets in your home been replaced since 1995? So this is important because if you answered the earlier question that your house was built before 1995, that's good, but you may have replaced the toilets. And so this gives you an opportunity to refine that even further. And if I had answered yes, that my house was actually newer than 95, then I would get a different set of questions related to the toilets here. So yes, but I have replaced the toilets. Have you replaced the toilets since 2007? Did you install high-efficiency WaterSense? Actually, I replaced my toilets prior to 2007. They are not HETs at this point. So I'm going to say that. Do any of the home toilets in your house leak or get stuck? I'm going to say yes, that does happen once in a while, and so that will actually increase the leakage component that we'll see at the end of the calculator. So now here is kind of interesting because I answered yes to that question about the leakage. I can click here and get immediately jumped over to information on how to fix a leak for a toilet. So that's one of the neat features. Because of a particular answer that I gave, I get customized information through the calculator. All right, but now I'm done with the bathroom, and so we go back to the overall view of the house, and now I'm going to go to look at the laundry room, which in this house, which is a very compact house, also happens to be in the garage. So in the garage, there's really only one area for answering questions, and that's related to the clothes washer. Do you wash your clothes in a washer or by hand? Well, thankfully, I have a clothes washer, so I'm going to say yes to that. My household typically washes, and this is another one with 4 people in the house. We probably do almost a load almost every day. So I'm going to say we do 7 loads of laundry per week. Please indicate the type of washer used to clean your clothes. We, I'm embarrassed to say, still have the clothes washer we bought right when we got married. So it is a old-style top-loading clothes washer. So I am going to say newer top-loading clothes washer. I think it was bought in 1993. So it's not an older pre-1990, but it is not a Energy Star or a high-efficiency clothes washer. So I'm going to see some additional clothes washing usage, I think, as a result of that answer. So one thing that's kind of neat is as you're going along, your results change. And so if you've been noticing this little pie chart here along in the corner, every time I answer a question, it adjusts a little bit up or down depending on the answers. And right now, you can see that outdoor use is dominating the annual pie for my particular responses. So we've finished now with the indoors, and now we can go to the final set of questions which relate to the garden. So that jumps us here to the outdoor. There's a series of 3 different tips that you can get. Let's just check out one of the tips here. This tip says that other than over-fertilizing, over-watering is the most common mistake in lawn care. This wastes thousands of gallons and dollars annually. So that's another useful tip you can get. Let's see what the questions are, though. Important first question, do you have an in-ground irrigation system? Through the research that's been done on residential water use, we know that if you have an in-ground irrigation system, you're likely to use a lot more water outdoors than if you're a manual irrigator or a hose dragger, as they're affectionately known as. So yes, my house has an in-ground system. Does your in-ground system have an automatic timer? Yes, it does. Does your automatic irrigation system have an override shut-off device such as a soil moisture sensor or a rain sensor? And mine actually does, and in fact, I just had to install a new rain sensor this past week because the old one had finally given up the ghost. Does your automatic irrigation system have a weather-based irrigation controller, also known as a smart controller? And yes, my system is an older Weathermatic, and that was with the weather station. So I answered yes to all those questions. Now this is kind of an interesting one. How frequently do you water your landscape during the warm or dry part of the year? And this really relates, to how you program your clock, or if you're a manual irrigator, how frequently you actually get out there and water. I'm going to put down 2 to 3 times per week because that's really what I have my clock programmed for. I apologize, this thing keeps popping up. Okay, so that's done. So then one of the final things here related to the outdoor is to estimate the percentage of your landscape that is covered in these various different types of ground cover. And this includes the pool. So if I had a swimming pool, I might say that, let's say, 50% of my house, my landscape area was the pool. But I don't have a pool, so I'm going to put that at 0. If at my house, I'm going to guess about 60% of the landscape is turf. Let's say 20% is trees and shrubs. That gets me up to 80, and you see there's a running total here at the bottom. Now, let's say I was to put in 30% and go over the top. I would see now that I'm over at 110. It actually wouldn't let me submit that as an answer. So I'm going to go back and say 10% for a flower garden. Now I'm seeing that I probably put in too much for turf. I'm going to go back to 50% for turf. I'm going to go down to 10% here for native, and I have quite a bit of mulch also, so I'm going to say 10%. So now I'm up to 100%. I think that's a reasonable representation of the landscape at my house. So now I've got the green check on the landscape, and I go back out. Now at this point, this little footprint icon has now appeared, and it says we now have enough info to measure your carbon footprint. So I'm going to say, and now I'll click on that. Who supplies the water to your home? Now this is most people are going to click the utility, but there will be some who might be filling out who are self-supplied. So I'm using the utility. My water is actually heated by solar. I have solar hot water, but I'm going to say it's gas. I have a gas backup. If I were to click on solar, then I would have no carbon footprint. But if I click gas, then I'm going to get some kind of a carbon footprint associated. So here it is. My carbon footprint associated with gas water heating for this house is 3,164 pounds per year. That's quite a bit. So now it says you can review your results. So you have a couple of choices. I could click review my results here, or I could close it here and click right here, show results. And now this is the final output. I could click and get a printer-friendly version. But let's just go through and take a look and see what it showed in terms of the results for my house here in Boulder, Colorado. 56% of the outdoor use, 56% of the total use was estimated to be outdoor, which makes about 44% indoor. Of that 44% indoor, it's estimating about a third of that, or maybe a quarter of that, a little more than that, is for hot water, and 31% for cold water. And see that it's giving an estimated per household use, gallons per year and gallons per day for all of the different end uses. This all comes from the data. And then with a total of about 153,000, 154,000 gallons per year, which isn't all that far off from what I actually use. I think I put the landscape size a little bigger than the actual. This shows water use per day indoors. So just if you just break down the indoor use, here's the energy in the water use that shows the indoor cold and hot water components. And then this, what I think is the most valuable part in some ways of the results, are really the comparison. So here's my house right here versus an average house in the same zip code. So the way that I responded this time, I'm using a little more water than the average house, and I'm using about twice as much water. Look at that, 153 versus 75 versus a water-efficient or water-wise house in my same neighborhood. So I'm going to get a lot of recommendations as a result of putting in those answers. So my faucet use was higher. So I get a tip here with a link to help me reduce faucet use. My toilet use was higher, way higher. So I'm getting a recommendation to replace my old ULFs with WaterSense labeled HETs. Shower use, same thing, dishwashers, clothes washers, all the way on down. And then here is a recap at the very end of all the ways that I answered the questions. So if I were to click up here on the printer-friendly version, then that would take me to another page, and then this is all set up to automatically print right to the screen. So that is a quick run-through of the live demo of the water calculator. I'm going to switch back now, back to the presentation. And we can jump back to the live demo later if people have questions about what happened. But at this point, I think I'm going to turn it back to Mary Ann to talk a little bit about some program ideas and how you might be able to use the calculator and integrate it with your water efficiency programs.
Thanks, Peter. I think what we wanted to do here in this section is make it clear that you can use the calculator even as it is to help you in your programs. And what we wanted to do was assemble a couple of ideas to run by you. Certainly you can think of a whole lot more depending upon how you're running your programs, your public information and school education programs. But here are a couple of slides with some ideas for how you can make the calculator work. First of all, you could ask your customers to complete the consumption report. Peter just showed you what the final report looks like. And if the customer either provides that report to you, it can be printed or turned into a PDF and can be emailed to you or in some way shared with you. You can then tie that to free retrofit incentives such as rebates in your programs or particular prizes. One particular idea that surfaced from one of our members was that anyone who completed a consumption report and turned it in to the water utility would get a free Never Waste water bottle. So that was an example of one of those. Second idea is to offer a coupon for a certain percentage off of their water bill for a completed consumption report, especially if you could prove that you reduced your water use from implementing the tips in that consumption report. So that's one idea. Another idea is to hold neighborhood competitions for the lowest reported calculator water use as verified by metered records. This is a little contest that is underway in one of our member agency territories. And this would be evaluated on a per capita basis. So as you know from watching Peter walk you through the calculator, the data is given on a per household basis, but you'd have to actually compare on a per capita basis if you were to have a neighborhood competition. Going to the next slide, we have a few more ideas. This is something you could use in schools. You could hold a contest in schools and award prizes for the most number of printed reports filed per class. Prizes that you could give would be, an example would be maybe baseball game tickets or movie tickets. I once worked on a project where we got reports back from the kids in the classrooms, and they were the classrooms that had the highest percentage of return reports did get to go to a Dodgers game. So that was a hugely popular incentive for those kids. You could also use the calculator as a water use teaching aid in high school classes. So teaching high school students or even middle school students how to perform a water audit and how to sort of verify that using calculator results. And then lastly, you can consider customizing the calculator for your specific utility program. One of the options that we offer is we give free of charge to our AWE members a linking logo, and we'll show you an example of that at the end of the slideshow. A linking logo that has your water agency's name on it or your business name on it, and then that logo becomes what the customer clicks on to go to the Home Water Works website and to the calculator. But if you wanted to actually customize the calculator using your information and your branding for your logos, then we are also offering options for doing that. And I'll turn it back over to Peter to talk about the calculator customization.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the basic calculator is available for free. Anybody can use the calculator. If you're a member of the Alliance, you can get a logo you can link to the calculator. But a number of utilities are interested in developing the calculator so that it's really customized for their particular agency and has particular data that is more robust and more accurate than what we've been able to assemble through this more national level. I apologize that my computer keeps popping this thing up. I'll get rid of it as quickly as I can.
I think you have to say no, and then it doesn't come up again.
No, all right. I've just been too busy to tell. Thank you. But a basic customization package would include the member name and logo as part of the calculator embedded, would offer a hosting service, and then one of the most important things would be putting in updated ET data for the zip codes within your service area. We were able to obtain a national ET database from USGS that we use for the calculator, but a lot of those data are based on long-term averages, and they are, frankly, a little bit out of date for a number of zip codes. And what we found is when we compare the numbers in there against what utilities are using to provide people information for irrigation in their service areas, that the ET values are not really that good. All right, I'm going to click no. I hope I did the right thing. So I think the ET substitution is a really something that can improve, particularly the outdoor estimate of water use. Then there's other more basic modifications to the tips, to the rebates, and to the links. So you can have, instead of having a link to the toilet repair, maybe go to the Home Waterworks website, you could have that go to a toilet repair component of your own website, or a specific video that you were particularly interested in. The other thing is then you can get Google Analytics so that you can evaluate how many people are using the calculator within your service area by zip code specifically. So there's a one-time setup fee of $9,500, and then an annual licensing and hosting fee for this basic service of $6,000. We can answer. So Steve, you want to talk a little bit about Google Analytics?
Sure. Thanks, Peter and Marianne. So what we want to do is be able to provide everybody with detailed usage analytics. We want to find out how many people are using the calculator, how many people are abandoning, and how many people are finishing. By zip code, by state, there's a lot of customization features available through Google Analytics, which we can employ with you to develop automated reports that would be sent either weekly or monthly to one or several administrators. Next slide, Peter.
Yeah. So then some additional, more detailed customer customization is possible. I'm getting my words confused here. So this is really something that we would have to provide maybe on a case-by-case basis. And we've had some requests for people who really want more detailed and in-depth integration with their customer billing system, custom reporting, development of water budgets, comparison against actual consumption. So there's a variety of other more detailed customizations that are available, and we'd be happy to work with you if there's something that you're specifically thinking about. There's really some interesting possibilities that you might be able to do if you're interested in going that route. So really there's three different options that we're offering right now. One is just the free option. You can just link to the calculator as it is, a more basic customization, and then a more detailed customization. Steve, why don't you talk a little bit about IFrame Hosting?
Sure. The objective with IFrame Hosting is that we want to be able to make one update to a central calculator, understanding that each utility or water agency would have its own logos and rebate links, et cetera, in there. But if there's any algorithm changes we want to employ across the board on a global level, we can do that very easily. We can also have an IP address that we know is pinging off of a specific server. So we have data from a specific website or from a specific agency. And it also helps us maintain the branding of the website.
So as we're doing like a basic hosting package, we would be using this IFrame hosting so that the calculator would be kept on a separate server, so there wouldn't have any issue in terms of security or data or any problems there. And it also gives us the ability to maintain the calculator remotely and to offer continual upgrades to anyone, as we improve the calculator. So as new data becomes available, then all of the different calculator implementations would get updated with the latest and greatest information. Steve?
Yep, just an example of that. When Google updates their maps, we're all familiar with Google Maps. It's done not on every single computer, but just in one main server, and propagated across the board to everybody. So it's a more cost-effective solution.
So Marianne?
So that's basically the summary of the calculator and what options we're offering for customization. We would love to talk with you individually about whether or not you know, this is an option that will work for you. So please feel free to either ask us some questions right now, type them in to the chat box, and we can talk about some of your questions right now, or you can give us a call at the office and we can set up a meeting to talk with you about it. We're also happy to provide the linking logo. You can see an example of the linking logo. Here's one that we did for the Otay Water District in California. So you see what that looks like. We can do a customized one for you that looks just like that. And you put that on your website and tie the link to the Home Water Works website to that little icon and graphic, and then the user goes right to the Home Water Works site. The difficulty is the user doesn't easily come back to your site. So if you wanted to make sure that the customer always stayed within your website environment, then I think the customized calculator option is one you should look at, because that will be done all within the context of your own web environment and your web presence, and you keep the customer there on your website. Plus then you have the opportunity to customize the calculator even further to your specific program needs. So if you're interested in this and want to think about it some more, we will post a PDF of the presentation as well as this recording from the webinar, and Jeffrey should have that up in a couple of days. Contact us for a free linking logo. We'd be happy to give that to you free of charge. As a member of the Alliance, that's one of your benefits. And here's the phone number to contact us for customization options. And just by way of information, if you enjoy our webinars, just want to let you know that our next webinar, which will also be a free webinar, will talk about our rates handbook and rates model. That's part of our Financing Sustainable Water project, and that webinar will be on September 9th. So that's what we have scheduled at this moment in time. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Jeffrey to see what questions we might have. Jeffrey? I think you're still on mute, Jeffrey.
Hey, Marianne, sorry about that. My phone just froze up for a second. We do have quite a number of questions, actually, and I'm going to actually start one that was a topic mentioned later in the webinar about IFrame hosting. This person's hoping you can elaborate more about IFrame hosting, and if there is an annual hosting fee for that IFrame hosting.
Well, let me first start out, before I turn it over to Steve to talk about the details of it, let me just point out that there is an annual fee for licensing the calculator and hosting it, and that annual fee will be $6,000 a year, and that includes all of the updates, all of the server support that we would be giving to this process, and that's separate from the one-time setup for whatever the customizations are that you're interested in. The one-time customization is $9,500, but there's an annual licensing fee and hosting fee of $6,000 a year. So let me turn it over to Steve to talk, and Peter to talk about the IFrame hosting and what that means.
Basically what it means is it's going to look as if it's on your website. It's going to, just like this Google map here, there's, from the user perspective, it has the look and feel of being on. In addition to that, we again have the ability to modify the algorithms or ET data on a global level very quickly. It's going to be living on a server that's not on your website, and one of the reasons we want to do that is we want to help manage communication going back and forth between the server and the utility. If, for example, a utility wanted to send an email out to 100,000 people, we want to be able to scale up the server so it can handle 5 or 10% of those people hitting at any one time. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thank you very much. We do have a number of questions about the calculator itself, and assumptions it makes and how it works exactly. One here relating to zip code. From whom did you get the average home's usage by zip code? And what data do you take into account for the zip code input?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that. So the zip code is used for calculating outdoor water use only. The zip code, so when I typed in my zip code during the demo of 80304, then it took that information and went to a giant table that has every zip code in the United States and Canada in it. And associated with each zip code is an ET level from this USGS and also from this Canadian data set that Glenn Pleasance helped us to obtain. So that's how the zip code data is used. It's really just to locate whoever's filling out the calculator somewhere in North America and to come up with an estimate of the outdoor water requirement within that zip code. Now, it's not, this is an estimate, of course, so we know very well that ET varies within zip codes and even within, a few mile areas. So that there is definitely an element of estimate. In terms of the water use, the indoor water use estimate, that is generated from the responses to the other questions. So the key questions for the indoor water use are, how many people are in your house? That's critical. And then also, what year your house was built. And so then we separate out homes that were built before the Energy Policy Act came into play and then after. Using that information, we can generate an estimate of indoor use. That's the very quick estimate. And that's generated using a series of equations that come from the residential end uses of water study. Then we go, as people go through each of the rooms in the calculator, and they say, well, actually, I have this type of toilet, and actually, I turn the faucet off, and actually, I don't have any leaks, that sort of stuff. That then modifies the calculation further, step by step, until once someone has completed all of those steps, they have the final results of the calculator.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Question here is, can you aggregate the data for real comparisons between neighbors within the community?
That would be something that would have to be an add-on. So right now, the comparison, basically, it takes your zip code, and we have sort of a setup for an average house and for a water-efficient house. And it just uses the zip code and then applies that and calculates the average, and it's really based on a national average. And the same thing with the water efficient home. It's built on, that's based on research that's been done on houses that are 100% retrofit or that are built to something very close to the WaterSense standard. So that's how we come up with those estimates, and those are not variable on region, except for the zip code, the outdoor component.
We could do it on a custom level. We'd have to associate it with a primary key, which would be Steve Wetzel here. We'd have to associate it with the primary key, which could be an account number or some other number, which would be associated with the utility and the zip code, and we could monitor usage that way.
Yeah, I mean, if let's say you wanted to do a customization of the calculator, and you had some average consumption information for your service area, we could then use that for the average. We could then compare everybody against the average for that specific service area. In terms of actually within a neighborhood, that would be a little bit more challenging. We have to look at that. It's possible, though. It's certainly possible that could be done.
Thank you there. Then, kind of related there then, can a regional water association buy customization for, say, 200 of their member water systems, which are actually very small in size?
I would say talk to us. We're open to a variety of different possibilities, and there's certainly options that we haven't contemplated, so let's talk and see if we can work something out.
We know, let me just add that we know we have interest from a number of very, very small systems for whom the quoted price that we've developed for the customization package is probably out of range. But for a regional organization that might have a lot of these small agencies in a standard package that would be offered to all, I think there's opportunities to discuss a negotiated package amount for that.
Great, thank you. Regarding the calculator again, and the outdoor aspect of it. Does the calculator have special considerations for home gardens? And also, how can the outdoor watering via hose be captured if there's no permanent irrigation present?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to see if I can go back. I may not be able to do this very easily. Let's do that. No, that's not going to do it. Let me just answer that question. I think that's the best way to do this. So in terms of a garden, if you have a garden, there's a part of the calculator where you specify the percent of the landscape that is in turf, that is in hardscape, that is in mulch, and also garden is one of the choices. So let's say I had a yard, and 50% of my yard was a vegetable garden. I would put that in. The 50% of my landscape is a vegetable garden, and then the other 50% is something else. That we have a special ET factor that applies to each of those different types of landscapes, and then that has how we estimate the outdoor water use. And those factors are also something that could be customized. So if you're in a particular region and you have specific information about the water requirements of vegetable gardens, then we could update it in that respect. Was there a second part of the question that I missed?
Yeah, the water via hose versus...
Yes, okay, so let's say that I don't have an automatic irrigation system and I just use manual irrigation. The very first question when I go to the outdoor water use part is it asks me, do you use an in-ground system? If I answered no, then I would get a different series of questions that were related just to manual irrigation. So yeah, the calculator is set up for people who have both in-ground and manual irrigation.
Thank you. Question, can the calculator be adapted for multifamily buildings?
So right now the calculator is set up for single-family residential. We think it could be adapted for multifamily, but it would require a separate implementation because there would need to be a sort of a separate series of questions, and so that's again something I would say talk to us separately about. We think it's possible, but it's not something that is currently implemented.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. Question about the water calculator possibly ever becoming a mobile app.
So that's something that we have thought about pretty extensively. Right now, we have optimized the calculator so that it at least looks decent on an iPad or on a smartphone. The next step that we think would be the most beneficial would be to implement the water calculator using what's called responsive design. And responsive design automatically senses the browser. So it knows, okay, this is a computer browser, or it knows this is a smartphone browser, or it knows it is an iPad browser, or a Kindle Fire browser, whatever it is. And then it sizes then itself automatically to best fit for that particular browser. Our sense is that is going to be a more successful way of implementing the calculator than having a separate standalone app that someone would have to download, and which would then reference the same server and function the same way. So we're not opposed to the idea of an app, but we just think that the responsive design solution might be a more elegant and less expensive approach.
Oh, wonderful, thank you. Something about you said there were tips involved on the calculator with the blue dots providing tips. This person is questioning maybe why not have more details so folks can learn, such as regarding the gallons per minute of a low-flow faucet or shower and the gallons per flush of a water-sense toilet. Is that something maybe possible?
Absolutely. Yeah. Tips are something that could be added very easily through one of the two customization options. And I think the basic customization, you can change the language in some of the existing tips. Under the more detailed customization, we could add additional tips, really, and sort of the sky's the limit there.
Let me also point out that the Home Waterworks website has quite
One
a
of the
bit in the way of
was,
narrative.
oh, go ahead.
Narrative tips in Home Waterworks. So if you go to the Home Waterworks site itself, separate from the calculator, there are lots of tips that are available both for indoor and outdoor. So if Peter's now going to, if you go to the indoor water use, or now he's in soil preparation, you can see there's a long detailed list. In indoor we have tips for toilets that list all of the things that you were just mentioning in your question. So that information is already embedded in the Home Waterworks website itself. The question that Peter answered is how much of that do you want to embed in the calculator itself?
Great. Wonderful. Sorry.
And Steve, did Steve want to say something about that?
Hey, Jeffrey, can I please? Yeah, I missed part of what you said, Marianne, because of the audio feed, but I want to reiterate that we will be developing a content management system which will allow for utilities and agencies to easily change that information.
Yeah, we're experiencing difficulty with your audio, Steve. Your internet connection is not good.
Jeffrey, back to you.
Great, thanks everybody. Question here about water usage inside the home. How about water usage for those with pet fish? And I guess maybe we're assuming the larger fish tanks. Is that amount of water significant enough to maybe be incorporated?
It could be. That's not something that we have in the calculator right now. That fish tanks and that there's sort of an other miscellaneous category, and that's where that type of water use would go in. And I think that would, if you have a service area where it's very popular to keep fish, and you have a lot of customers who do that, then or koi ponds, whatever it is, that's something that could be added through the more advanced customization.
Thank you, Peter. Again, about the water calculating aspect, water usage calculating aspect. Does laundry assume hot or cold water use? And what if a domestic water circulation system is being used? How could that?
Yeah. So for the hot and cold, we just are using right now an available average that splits out hot, the percentage of hot and cold house based on available data. And when the next residential end-use study becomes available to us in the coming months, there's going to be additional and hopefully more updated data on that hot water and cold water split. I think developing it beyond that would require probably significant programming. It's possible within the more advanced customization, I think.
Great, thank you. So just a question on the output, the report that one gets from the calculator. Is there a date associated with when that was, the output given? And also, could the calculator be put in other languages, such as Spanish, French, or Chinese?
So here is the output from the calculator, and yes, the date is right here. So this is the date that it was created. So yes, so the answer to the first question is that it is date, and in fact it's right there. It's even bigger. The date and timestamp is absolutely part of that report. In terms of a translation, yeah, I mean that's something that could be done for sure. That would be more the advanced customization, but we're open to a lot of different options, and it's really interesting to hear a lot of the ideas that folks are coming up with. That's great.
Thank you. Here's a comment question about the output of the calculators. Several months ago, they did this. They had gone through the calculator, and it overestimated by almost 100% of what they actually used in their home. And they were told that if one was a real low user of water, then this calculator wouldn't work. Why is that, or is that the case? Or can you clarify?
Well, the calculator is based on averages, and even though we try to make it refine it, it's an imperfect system, and it's always going to be an estimate. So ultimately the actual consumption at the house is the be all and end all, and this is just an estimate. So for one person, it really depends on the situation. And this is also, I think, is something that we're hoping will improve when we get the updated data set. We know water use has gone down. Right now our algorithms are based on a series of studies that were done really from 1999 through about 2005 to 2006. So in the next few months we are going to be updating those. I expect that'll bring down the overall average the way that it estimates once we have that new improved information.
I'd also like to make a comment about the extreme water conservationist, because that person is always going to have the calculator estimate more water consumption than they really use, because they already are way beyond that average profile. And I think I remember the email exchange that we might have had with that particular user about it. When you've got indoor water use that's approximating, somewhere between 20 and 25 gallons per person per day, that's way out of bounds of what the typical water use patterns are envisioned in the United States in this calculator. That's not to say we don't want eventually to have people go in that direction, but we thought it would be more instructive to do a calculator based on averages that would appeal to a broader number of people that actually do need to take a look at whether their indoor water use is as efficient as possible. Those extreme conservationists who really already know what to do, the calculator is not built for them, it's built for the reverse. It's built for people who really don't have any idea what their house is actually consuming.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marianne. Question regarding reclaimed water for irrigation. What about that use? And could information be added to include gray water systems in the calculator? Say if a person has installed a system to the laundry to water the landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a question right now that asks about self-supply, but it doesn't really relate to the estimate of the demands. So now the question is kind of interesting, because what they're saying is that they have an alternative supply, but really what the calculator calculates is how much water your house uses. So if someone were really interested in adding that, I'm not sure it would change the demand side of it, but we might be able to generate some analysis that shows this is the percentage of your demand that's being met through the city supply versus through some other alternative source.
Thank you, Peter. Question here regarding the comparison of an efficient home versus the typical home. And here's the question. What is the approximate difference between a conservative water user or a very efficient home versus a home that does not have any efficient appliances?
Well, it really varies, and here I pulled it up again so you could see how this is, again, how I filled out the calculator this time around versus a water-wise house. So, I mean, there's so many differences, here it's, a water-wise house is using only 75,000 gallons per year versus what the calculator estimated for me at 150. So that is a really significant difference. A lot of that is going to be due to the landscape size and the landscape composition of the water-wise home. I mean, you can see that's the biggest thing, 86,000 gallons versus about 30,000 gallons. But there's big differences indoor as well. So really there are significant differences.
The last question here that I have kind of relates to the same, those comparison numbers. And maybe you've just answered it and I just didn't catch on to it, but I'm going to read it again. It's lengthy. How are the comparison numbers in the end report calculated? Does the water-wise home and the average home in the neighborhood get updated each time someone uses that calculator from that neighborhood?
Yes.
That is,
yes.
Is there the possibility of average numbers will be skewed if unusual cases are inputs from the neighborhood?
So the average, the average of the water-wise house are not based on local information. They are based right now on national averages. So this is the national average house. But it is, I do want to specify that average is then tailored by the zip code. So the indoor estimate for the average house with 4 people is going to be the same anywhere across the country. But the outdoor estimate is tailored based on the zip code. The same thing is true for the way the water-wise house. So it's adjusted by the number of people in the house, and so that it's the same number of people as specified by the user, and then it's a fixed number. So if you fill out this calculator with a Colorado zip code and 4 people and a New York zip code and 4 people, you're going to see the same number for water-wise indoors, but you're going to see different numbers for water-wise outdoors. So I hope that explains it. This is something that could be changed in the future if you know, through a customization process, if you wanted to do a comparison against more local data rather than national averages. But right now, you know, we developed this calculator to be as broadly applicable as possible, which is part of the reason why it's not as as purely accurate for every user, but it's really designed with the big picture in mind. The customization process enables us then to think more about the specifics of a particular service area and to make adjustments that would make the calculator more accurate for a particular region.
Wonderful. Thank you, Peter. Last question I have here is, how many times do you envision the average customer to use this program or the calculator?
How many? I don't really have a vision for how many times people. I think it's more of a function of how it's promoted and how it's utilized by the utility. Marion, you want to talk a little bit about what kind of usage we've seen on the calculator?
Well, I think we've seen usage where people go in and get some preliminary results, maybe don't go all the way through and finish it. Steve referenced that when he was talking about the Google Analytics report. I think getting people to go to it on a regular basis would have to tie into what you want them to do that changes and how you want them to identify those changes and perhaps send them to you. I think they need to be motivated in some way that comes through from a message from the water utility itself. Otherwise, I would expect that they would probably go once to go and do the audit and get their results and maybe think about what they might change, but they won't come on a repetitive basis unless they have a reason to do so. And that's part of why I'm trying to think of ideas to utilize the calculator in existing conservation programs so that people are constantly being reminded to go back in there and check and verify their water use. Ideally, even if everyone in your service area used it once, you would be way ahead. And hopefully reducing residential water consumption as a result of that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marion. I did actually get another question in when Peter was speaking to the averages, national average numbers and such. And this is regarding indoor. Where did those numbers come from? Are the indoor national averages maybe based on Amy Vickers?
Well, they're based on the Water Research Foundation and EPA end-use studies that have been done, the residential end uses of water, and then the EPA retrofit studies, and then a number of other end-use studies. And in fact, Amy Vickers, the values in her book also come from those same studies.
Wonderful. Thank you. I have no more questions.
All right, then I would like to close up the webinar and thank all of you for attending and for being part of this discussion. We encourage you to think about using the water use calculator in your programs and think about contacting us to have it customized for your use if you would find that beneficial. So we look forward to hearing from you. We have our toll-free number here on the slide. You can also give us a call at the office at our regular office number as well. So we look forward to hearing from you, and thank you again for attending the webinar.